Security, get this black woman out of my sight. She's contaminating the air I breathe. Victoria Hale, the billionaire's mistress, didn't even look at Jasmine when she said it. She just snapped her fingers like summoning a servant to take out trash. Jasmine Brooks. Landry stood frozen, 7 months pregnant, wearing a $15,000 gown at a charity gala hosted under her own husband's name. "Victoria, please. I'm Alexander's wife. I organized this event." The mistress laughed. "Honey, you're not a wife. You're a diversity project that expired. 200 guests watched. Not one spoke. None of them knew that this was only the opening act. Because before the Landrys finished celebrating their little victory, a $50 million private jet would land on their private runway in the Pacific Palisades. And the billionaire's pregnant black wife they had just watched be humiliated. Her 3 brothers would step out, and they weren't there to beg. 6 hours before that satisfying moment in the ballroom, Jasmine Brooks Landry was exactly where she belonged. Not at a fancy gala surrounded by people who despised her, but in a delivery room at UCSF Medical Center, holding the hand of a terrified first-time mother. "You're almost there," Jasmine whispered, her voice steady and warm. "One more push. Your daughter wants to meet you." The baby arrived at 4:47 p.m., screaming, healthy, a miracle wrapped in 7 lb of new life. The mother grabbed Jasmine's hand, tears streaming down her exhausted face. "Thank you. You're the only nurse who made me feel like a person instead of a number." Jasmine smiled and squeezed her hand gently. Everyone deserves to feel that way, especially on the most important day of their life. 862 babies. That's how many Jasmine had helped bring into this world during her career. Stanford educated, founder of a literacy program that had taught over 10,000 children to read. She had built something meaningful with her own hands, her own heart. But tonight, none of that would matter to the people waiting at the Landry Foundation gala. To them, she would always be one thing: the black woman who had somehow tricked a billionaire into marriage. Her husband, Alexander Landry IV, was San Francisco royalty, Forbes 400, net worth of $3.2 billion. CEO of Landry Enterprises with glittering properties from Nob Hill to Dubai Marina. Old money married to new ambition. They had met at a charity auction 4 years ago. He pursued her relentlessly for 6 months before she finally agreed to coffee. Just coffee, she had insisted, but coffee became dinner. Dinner became weekends in the Pacific Palisades. And 18 months later, they married in an $8 million ceremony in Napa Valley. For 3 years, Jasmine believed she had found her fairy tale. She was catastrophically wrong. Victoria Hale had entered their lives 18 months ago, blonde, beautiful, 29 years old. Officially, she was Alexander's senior communications advisor. Unofficially, she was in his bed before their first business trip ended. Jasmine noticed the signs, the late-night texts he hid, the business trips that didn't add up, the perfume on his collar that wasn't hers. But she stayed for the baby growing inside her, for the family she desperately wanted to create. As she rushed home to change for the gala, her phone buzzed with an anonymous text. "Don't go tonight. They're planning something." She should have listened. The Summit Grand Ballroom looked like something from a fairy tale written by accountants. Crystal chandeliers scattered light across 200 of San Francisco's wealthiest faces. Champagne towers sparkled. Laughter tinkled like wind chimes made of money. Jasmine arrived at 7:23 p.m., slightly breathless from rushing. Her emerald gown, chosen because Alexander once said green made her glow, hugged her pregnant belly beautifully. She had spent an hour on her makeup, wanting to look perfect for the literacy program she had built from nothing. The moment she crossed the threshold, she felt it. The shift in the air pressure, the way conversations died mid-sentence as she passed, the sidelong glances that lingered a beat too long. And there, standing at the center of the room, like she owned every square inch of it, was Victoria Hale, right next to Alexander, wearing a dress almost identical to Jasmine's, except Victoria's dress was white. Jasmine approached the first familiar face she saw. Margaret Wells, a philanthropist who had donated $200,000 specifically because of Jasmine's literacy initiative. Margaret, it's wonderful to see you again. Thank you so much for your continued support of Victoria, materialized between them like a designer-clad ghost. Mrs. Wells, Mrs. Howe, absolutely wonderful that you could join us tonight. I'm Victoria Hale, Alexander's partner in this meaningful work. Partner, the word dripped with double meaning. I'm actually his wife, Jasmine said, keeping her voice steady. And I founded the literacy program that, of course, you are, sweetheart. Victoria's smile never flickered. Legally speaking anyway, but we both know who really manages Alexander's life these days, don't we? Margaret Wells looked deeply uncomfortable. She muttered something about finding her seat and hurried away without another word. This scene repeated itself 4 more times. Every donor Jasmine tried to thank, Victoria intercepted. Every conversation Jasmine attempted, Victoria torpedoed with a smile and a subtle knife. It was choreographed, deliberate, a masterclass in social destruction disguised as politeness. During one of these ambushes, Victoria glanced at Jasmine's wrist and let out a performative gasp. Oh my goodness, what a darling little bracelet! Did Target have a sale? A woman nearby leaned toward her husband and whispered, That's actually a limited edition Cartier love bracelet. It costs around $80,000. Jasmine heard every word. She didn't bother correcting Victoria. What would be the point? People like Victoria didn't care about truth. They cared about winning. And right now, Victoria was winning. The seating chart was where the cruelty became concrete. Jasmine walked to the head table. The table she had personally arranged 3 weeks earlier, placing each name card with care. Her nameplate was gone. In its place sat a woman she had never seen before, laughing at something Alexander's business partner had said. Excuse me, Jasmine said politely. I believe there's been a mistake. This is my assigned seat. Victoria appeared instantly, as if she had been waiting for this exact moment. Actually, this table is reserved for people who make meaningful contributions to the foundation. Her voice carried across the nearby tables, ensuring maximum audience. Perhaps you'd be more comfortable near the kitchen. I'm sure that environment would feel more familiar to you. The implication was unmistakable. Several guests shifted in their seats. A few exchanged uncomfortable glances. None of them spoke up. 2 security guards approached with rehearsed concern. Ma'am, we need you to step aside while we verify your invitation to this event. Verify my Jasmine's voice caught in her throat. I'm Jasmine Landry, Alexander's wife. I organized this entire gala. My name is on the invitation. The guard's expression remained professionally blank. Ma'am, please step aside. We're just following protocol. Jasmine looked across the ballroom at Alexander. He was watching. He had seen everything unfold. Their eyes met across the glittering crowd. Alexander. Her voice cracked despite her best efforts. Alexander, please say something. For a moment, something flickered in his expression. Guilt, shame, the remnants of whatever he had once felt for her. Then it vanished. Victoria is managing logistics tonight, he said flatly. Let's not create a scene, Jasmine. We can discuss this at home. Discuss this at home. His pregnant wife was being publicly stripped of her dignity, and his concern was avoiding a scene. The guards escorted Jasmine to a small table near the kitchen entrance. The chairs around her remained empty all evening. Nobody wanted to be seen sitting with the woman. The billionaire's mistress had marked for exile, but the cruelest cut was still coming. Across the room, Jasmine spotted a face that made her heart lift momentarily. Kendra, her best friend for 15 years. The woman who had held her through her father's funeral. The woman who knew every secret, every fear, every hope. Kendra was sitting at Victoria's table, laughing at something Victoria had said. Jasmine's heart didn't break. It shattered. She walked over slowly, each step heavier than the last, hoping desperately for some explanation. "Kendra, what are you doing sitting with her?" Kendra wouldn't meet her eyes. Her fingers twisted her napkin into knots. "Jazz, she offered to fund my non-profit, $300,000. I have 12 employees counting on me. I couldn't say no. You know what she's doing to my marriage? To my life?" Silence. That terrible, cowardly silence that says everything. "I'm sorry," Kendra whispered. But she didn't move. She didn't stand up. She stayed exactly where she was, at the table of the woman destroying her best friend's world. Jasmine returned to her exile by the kitchen. She placed both hands on her belly, feeling her baby kick against her palms. "At least you're still with me," she thought. "At least I'm not completely alone." The auction began at 9 p.m. sharp. Victoria took the stage like a conquering queen, her white dress flowing behind her, her smile bright enough to blind. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us for this magnificent evening." Her voice was honey laced with arsenic. "I want to take a moment to recognize the extraordinary people who made tonight possible." She named 6 people: board members, corporate sponsors, Alexander's golf buddies. She described their contributions in glowing detail. She did not mention Jasmine, not once, not even in passing. 3 years. Jasmine had spent 3 years building the literacy program from scratch. She had written every grant proposal. She had recruited every major donor in this room. She had personally visited 43 schools to implement the curriculum. And now she was being erased from her own creation. Something shifted inside Jasmine. The fear that had kept her quiet all night began transforming into something harder, something that refused to be invisible. She stood up. The room seemed to hold its breath as she walked toward the stage. Her heels clicked against the marble floor like a countdown. Each step was a declaration. Victoria saw her coming. Her smile flickered for just a heartbeat before snapping back into place. "Security. It appears we have an uninvited guest approaching the stage." Jasmine kept walking. "I'm not a guest. I'm his wife, and this is my program." The guards hesitated, looking between Victoria and Alexander. Alexander was suddenly fascinated by his champagne glass. Victoria descended from the stage, her white dress flowing like a battle flag. She stopped directly in front of Jasmine, close enough that her perfume was overwhelming. "You're embarrassing yourself," Victoria hissed. "You're embarrassing him. You think because you married money, you belong in rooms like this?" She gestured at the chandeliers, the champagne towers, the designer gowns. "You don't. You never did. You're just a little black girl from Oakland who got lucky for a while, and luck always runs out." Jasmine's voice was steel wrapped in silk. "I'm not leaving." "Yes, you are." What happened next would be broadcast on every major news network within 24 hours. Victoria placed her hand on her own stomach. The same protective gesture Jasmine made 100 times a day. "You need to leave," Victoria announced loud enough for the nearby tables to hear every word. "Because I'm carrying something you could never give him. A real heir. A child with pure Landry blood, not some." She didn't finish the sentence. The silence finished it for her. Jasmine felt the words like physical blows. Her vision blurred. Her hands moved instinctively to protect her belly. "Alexander," she whispered, one last desperate plea to the man she had married. Alexander Landry, billionaire, Forbes 400, master of his universe, looked at his pregnant wife, the woman he had pursued for months, The woman he had married in Napa Valley, the woman carrying his child. He looked directly at her, and he said absolutely nothing. That silence was the match that lit the fire. Victoria shoved Jasmine with both hands hard. Jasmine stumbled backward, her heel catching on the hem of her gown. Then Victoria's designer stiletto connected with Jasmine's pregnant belly. The kick wasn't accidental. It wasn't a stumble. It was deliberate, aimed, and vicious. Jasmine fell. Her dress tore. Her hands clutched her stomach as she hit the cold marble floor. 200 people witnessed every second. 200 phones recorded every frame. 200 voices could have screamed, could have intervened, could have done something, anything. The silence was deafening. A waiter near the kitchen dropped his tray. The crash of shattering glass was the only sound in the entire ballroom. Jasmine lay on the floor, her body curled protectively around her unborn child. The baby moved inside her. A small kick, as if to say, "I'm still here, Mama." Alexander finally moved. He walked toward his wife. For one desperate moment, Jasmine thought he might help her up, might finally choose her, might finally be the man she had believed him to be. "Jasmine," he said, his voice flat as a frozen lake. "Just go home. We'll talk about this later." Later. His pregnant wife had just been kicked in the stomach, and he wanted to discuss it later. 2 servers rushed forward to help Jasmine to her feet. A busboy retrieved her purse. These minimum wage workers showed more basic humanity than every millionaire in that room combined. As Jasmine walked toward the exit, a young staff member, a black woman barely out of college, whispered to her co-worker, "Oh my God, does she have any idea who that woman actually is?" "Who?" The young woman shook her head quickly, eyes wide. "Never mind. Forget I said anything." Jasmine heard. She filed it away. Outside, the night air hit her like cold water. She leaned against a marble column, her breath coming in ragged gasps, her hands trembling against her belly. Footsteps approached. Jasmine tensed, preparing for another attack. But the woman who appeared wasn't Victoria. She was tall, black, with natural hair and eyes that had witnessed too much injustice to be surprised by any of it. Her badge read, "Detective Serena Washington, SFPD." "Ma'am, are you all right? I saw what happened in there." Jasmine looked at her. "You saw? Did you say anything?" Serena's expression tightened with shame. "I was here as a guest. I didn't want to cause a scene. That's not an excuse." "I'm sorry." "No," Jasmine agreed quietly. "It's not. Please let me take you to a hospital. You need to make sure your baby is safe." Jasmine nodded slowly. For the first time all night, someone was treating her like a human being who mattered. As they walked to the car, Jasmine took one last look at the glowing windows of the Summit Grand Ballroom. Inside, the party continued. Champagne still flowed, laughter still echoed, as if nothing had happened. But something had happened, and soon everyone in that room would understand exactly how much. UCSF Medical Center at midnight felt like a different planet from the ballroom Jasmine had just fled. Harsh fluorescent lights replaced crystal chandeliers. The smell of antiseptic replaced expensive perfume. The beeping of monitors replaced chamber music. Dr. Nadia Khalil, a Mexican-American obstetrician who had known Jasmine for years, performed the ultrasound personally. "Baby's heartbeat is strong," she announced finally. "I'm seeing elevated stress hormones, but no physical trauma to the fetus. You're incredibly lucky, Jasmine." "Lucky?" The word felt like a cruel joke. "But you need complete rest," Dr. Khalil continued, her voice serious. "No stress, no confrontation. Any additional trauma could trigger early labor. Do you understand?" Jasmine nodded mechanically, but her mind was racing. Where would she go? What would she do? Her entire life had just collapsed like a house of cards in a hurricane. The answer arrived 90 minutes later. Alexander Landry walked into her hospital room like he owned the building, which, considering his family's donation history, he essentially did. He didn't ask how she was feeling. He didn't ask about the baby. He dropped a manila folder on her bed. "Sign these." Jasmine opened the folder. Her blood turned to ice. Annulment papers, not divorce. Annulment. A legal declaration that their marriage had never truly existed. $500,000, Alexander said, as if he were negotiating a real estate deal. "That's extremely generous, all things considered." "All things considered." Jasmine's voice rose. "I'm 7 months pregnant with your child. We've been married for 3 years. I was just assaulted by your mistress in front of 200 witnesses, and you're offering me $500,000 to disappear." Alexander's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "It's not about the baby. It's about protecting my family's reputation. My mother has made her expectations very clear." "Your mother." Something flickered across his face. Guilt, fear, or both, before his mask slipped back into place. "Just sign the papers, Jasmine. It's better for everyone. Better for everyone or better for you?" He didn't answer. He turned and walked out without another word. Jasmine stared at the annulment papers until the legal jargon blurred into meaningless shapes. She refused to cry. She refused to give them that satisfaction. The next morning revealed exactly how thoroughly her destruction had been planned. Her credit cards were declined at the hospital gift shop. When she called the bank, a sympathetic representative delivered devastating news. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Landry. Your name has been removed from all joint accounts as of 6 a.m. this morning." "Removed by whom?" "I'm not authorized to disclose that information." She tried to log into the Landry Foundation's administrative system, the organization she had built from nothing. Access denied. Her credentials had been revoked overnight. Her phone buzzed with a news alert. The headline made her stomach lurch. "Landry heir ends marriage to unstable nurse. Sources reveal erratic behavior. Mistress Victoria Hale named new foundation director." The article quoted anonymous sources close to the family who described Jasmine as emotionally volatile, prone to jealous delusions, and fundamentally unsuited for high society. 3 years of building something meaningful, 10,000 children taught to read, 862 babies delivered safely into the world, reduced to tabloid lies. Her phone rang. "Mama, baby, I saw the news online. Please tell me none of it is true." "It's not true, Mama." Not a single word. Her mother's voice cracked with helpless frustration. "I know, sweetheart. I believe you. But who else is going to believe us? We're nobody to people like them. We're nothing." That word nothing cut deeper than anything Victoria had said. Jasmine sat alone in her hospital room, watching rain stream down the window like tears. $84 in her personal checking account, 7 months pregnant, no home to return to, no friends she could trust, no family who could help. She picked up her phone and scrolled to contacts she hadn't called in 4 years. Jamal, Tyrone, Marcus, her brothers, the men who had sacrificed everything to put her through Stanford, the men she had deliberately kept at arm's length after marrying Alexander because she wanted to build her own life. Prove she didn't need anyone's help. Pride. Stupid, stubborn, costly pride. She dialed Jamal. It rang 4 times before connecting. "Brooks International Freight, Mr. Brooks's office." "How may I direct your call? This is Jasmine Brooks. I need to speak with my brother immediately." A pause. "I apologize, Miss Brooks. Mr. Brooks is in emergency meetings and absolutely cannot be disturbed. It's extremely urgent. Please, I understand. But that's simply not possible. Brooks International is facing a $2 billion lawsuit. The entire executive team is in crisis management mode." Jasmine's heart sank into her stomach. She tried Tyrone's number. Voicemail. She tried Marcus's number. Disconnected. The universe was sending her a message, and the message was brutal. You wanted independence. Now you have it. She turned on the television, desperate for any distraction. The news only made things worse. Brooks International Freight faces catastrophic lawsuit. Industry analysts predict possible collapse of shipping empire. Even her family was falling apart. Even the people she thought she could run to as a last resort were drowning in their own disasters. Jasmine placed both hands on her belly. It's just you and me now, little one. Just you and me. The knock came at 3:17 p.m. Evelyn Landry, Alexander's mother, matriarch of the Landry dynasty, queen of San Francisco society, swept into the hospital room like visiting royalty, inspecting a servant's quarters. She wore Chanel. She carried roses. She smiled like a predator who had already eaten. Jasmine, darling, I'm so terribly sorry about this awful misunderstanding. Jasmine pushed herself upright, slowly. Mrs. Landry, I didn't expect to see you here. Please call me Evelyn. We're family after all. The word family sounded obscene in her mouth. After everything that's happened, formality seems so unnecessary. She perched on the edge of the bed and took Jasmine's hand. Her grip was ice cold. I want to help you, dear. Truly I do. But first, you need to understand something important about our family. Understand what? Evelyn's smile remained fixed, but her eyes transformed into something ancient and cruel. I hired Victoria Hale 3 years ago. The very moment I learned Alexander was serious about marrying you. The words hit Jasmine like a second kick to the stomach. You what? You were never supposed to become part of this family. I assumed Alexander would come to his senses eventually, but the foolish boy actually fell in love with you. Genuinely, that wasn't part of my plan. Your plan? Victoria was supposed to be a temporary distraction, a pretty little affair to dissolve your marriage quietly. But she became ambitious. The pregnancy was entirely her idea, not mine. Jasmine pulled her hand away like she'd touched something diseased. You orchestrated everything. The affair, the humiliation tonight, all of it. I protected my family, my bloodline, my legacy, because I'm black. As Evelyn didn't flinch. She didn't look away. She didn't even bother denying it. Because you don't belong. Because your children would dilute a bloodline that has remained pure for 7 generations. Because every time I saw you at a Landry function, I saw everything my ancestors built being contaminated by your presence. The mask was completely off now. The gracious society matron had revealed the monster beneath. So here's what happens next, Evelyn continued briskly. You sign those annulment papers, you take the money, you disappear permanently, and in exchange, I won't destroy what little remains of your pathetic life. And if I refuse... Evelyn stood, smoothing invisible wrinkles from her Chanel suit. Then I will ensure your child never knows a moment's peace. Not in any school, not in any neighborhood, not in any career. The Landry influence extends further than you can possibly imagine. She walked to the door, then paused with her hand on the frame. You have 24 hours, dear. I suggest you use them wisely. The door clicked shut behind her. Jasmine sat in the suffocating silence, her body trembling uncontrollably. Then her phone rang. Unknown number. She answered with shaking hands. Jas, it's Jamal. Don't say anything. Just listen carefully. Her brother's voice was calm, controlled, exactly as she remembered. The lawsuit is fake. We created it ourselves. We needed Landry and his people to believe we were vulnerable and distracted. Jamal, what are you? We've known about Evelyn's campaign against you for 6 months. We've known about Victoria for 2 years. We've been waiting patiently for them to make their move. Jasmine's breath caught in her throat. You knew this entire time. Tomorrow, Alexander is hosting something called a victory brunch at his Pacific Palisades estate. I need you to attend. Let them believe they've won completely. And then what? Then you watch us take absolutely everything from them. Outside her window, a black SUV pulled into the hospital parking lot. The driver looked up at her room and nodded once. For the first time in 48 hours, Jasmine smiled. Landry Estate sprawled across 52 acres of Pacific Palisades oceanfront like a monument to generational wealth and inherited arrogance. Tennis courts, Olympic swimming pools, a hedge maze that cost more to maintain than most families earned in a decade, and most importantly for today's events, a private runway capable of landing full-sized jets. Alexander had never mentioned the runway during their marriage, just another secret in a relationship built entirely on them. The Victory Brunch, they actually called it that without a trace of irony, occupied the main terrace overlooking the Pacific. 150 guests, silver service that had been in the Landry family for 4 generations, champagne that cost more per bottle than most Americans earned in a week. At the center of it all, glowing like a triumphant angel in pristine white, sat Victoria Hale. "The Landry Foundation enters an exciting new era today," she announced, her voice carrying across the manicured lawn. "An era of fresh perspectives, bold leadership, and wonderful announcements." She paused for maximum dramatic effect. "I'm absolutely thrilled to share that Alexander and I are expecting our first child together." The applause was immediate and enthusiastic. Evelyn Landry, seated at the head table, dabbed at her eyes with a monogrammed handkerchief, performing the role of overjoyed grandmother-to-be. Jasmine watched from the edge of the terrace. She had arrived without announcement, exactly as Jamal had instructed. Security guards tracked her movements, but hadn't tried to remove her yet. Let them believe they've won completely. Victoria spotted her during the second course. Surprise flickered across her face before settling into satisfied contempt. "Security. It seems we have an uninvited guest attempting to crash our celebration." Jasmine didn't flinch. "I'm not here to cause trouble. I'm here to watch." "Watch what, exactly?" Victoria laughed, playing to her audience. "Your own complete irrelevance." "No." Jasmine's voice was perfectly calm, almost serene. "Yours." The words hung in the champagne-scented air. Victoria's smile wavered for just a fraction of a second. Then the sound came. It began as a distant rumble, barely audible over the string quartet. Most guests assumed it was a helicopter from a neighboring estate. The Pacific Palisades were thick with billionaires and their expensive toys. But this sound was different, deeper, more powerful. The rumble of serious machinery. One by one, heads turned toward the sky. A Gulfstream G700 was descending toward the Landry estate. Sleek, black fuselage, distinctive swept wings. The tail number gleamed in the morning sunlight. "No." Alexander stood up so abruptly, he knocked over his champagne flute. "What the hell is that?" An aide rushed over, face drained of color. "Sir, that aircraft is requesting permission to land on your private runway. I didn't authorize any landing today. They're not requesting permission, sir. They're informing us they're landing now." The Gulfstream touched down with surgical precision, engines screaming as it decelerated along the private runway. It taxied to a complete stop, the engines winding down to a whisper. For a long, breathless moment, nothing happened. The door remained sealed. The guests held their collective breath. Then the door swung open. The stairs descended automatically. 3 men emerged. First came Jamal Brooks, 38 years old, CEO of Brooks International Freight, personal net worth of $12 billion. He wore a Bioni suit that cost more than Alexander's favorite car, and moved with the unhurried confidence of a man who had never lost at anything important. Second came Tyrone Brooks, 35, founding partner of Brooks Capital, $8 billion under management. He was finishing a phone call as he descended the stairs. Yes, initiate the freeze on all Landry-connected accounts, effective immediately. No exceptions. Last came Marcus Brooks, 33, civil rights attorney, senior counsel at the ACLU. 6 Supreme Court victories on his resume. He carried a leather briefcase that Alexander would soon learn contained 15 years of meticulously documented Landry family secrets. A black Rolls-Royce Phantom materialized at the bottom of the stairs. The brothers climbed in without acknowledging the gaping crowd. The car drove directly toward the terrace. Jamal stepped out first. He walked through this parting crowd like a knife through silk, his eyes fixed on one target. Alexander Landry. Mr. Landry, Jamal's voice carried across the stunned silence of the terrace. We haven't formally met, but I've known everything about you for 5 years now. Alexander's face had turned the color of old newspaper. Who are you? Jamal Brooks. These are my brothers, Tyrone and Marcus. He paused, letting the name register. And that woman you've spent 3 years trying to destroy, Jasmine Brooks Landry, she's our little sister. The collective gasp from the crowd was audible across the entire estate. The $2 billion lawsuit, Jamal continued, his voice conversational, almost pleasant. Completely fabricated. We planted it ourselves. We needed you and your people to believe Brooks International was vulnerable and distracted. Alexander's mouth opened and closed uselessly. That's market manipulation. That's securities fraud. That's illegal. Actually, it's none of those things. We never filed anything publicly. We simply ensured the right rumors reached the right ears. Jamal smiled without warmth. We've known about your mother's 3-year campaign against Jasmine for 6 months. We've known about Victoria's true identity for 2 years. We were waiting for you to make your move. You're bluffing? This is some kind of elaborate bluff? Am I? Jamal nodded to Tyrone. Tyrone held up his phone, screen facing Alexander. As of 23 minutes ago, Brooks International has initiated a comprehensive review of every contract with Landry Enterprises. That represents $42 million in annual shipping revenue for your company, all of it currently frozen pending our investigation. Alexander turned desperately to his aide. Get my legal team on the phone. All of them. Now. It gets considerably worse, Marcus said, opening his leather briefcase with deliberate slowness. I have documentation of 17 separate wire transfers from Evelyn Landry to Victoria Hale over the past 36 months. Total amount transferred, $2.3 million. Evelyn rose from her seat, her composure finally cracking. This is absolutely preposterous. I also have recordings of your telephone conversations planning Jasmine's systematic removal from this family and detailed testimony from 6 members of your household staff regarding your private comments about your daughter-in-law's race. Marcus handed a tablet to a nearby guest, a prominent tech CEO, who happened to be a major Landry Foundation donor. Please feel free to verify the authenticity yourself. All metadata is intact and has been certified by independent forensic analysts. Evelyn sank back into her chair. Her face had shifted from white to gray. And you? Marcus said, turning to Victoria. Victoria Hale. Birth name Victoria Barrett, daughter of Victor Barrett, former CEO of Barrett Freight. Victoria's carefully constructed mask finally shattered completely. How do you know that name? Your father's company collapsed after losing a major bidding war to Brooks International in 2014. He took his own life 6 months after the bankruptcy filing. Marcus's voice softened slightly. We're genuinely sorry for your loss. Truly, no child should lose a parent that way. You destroyed him. Victoria's voice trembled with old rage. You destroyed my entire family. We won a business competition legally, ethically, by every standard that matters. Your father made choices we had no control over or responsibility for. Jamal stepped forward. But what you did to our sister, the systematic humiliation, the physical assault on a pregnant woman, those were your choices, and choices have consequences. Alexander had been frozen through all of this, his expression cycling through fear, denial, and desperate calculation. "This is harassment," he finally managed. "You can't simply land on my private property and threaten my family with baseless accusations." "Threaten?" Jamal raised an eyebrow. "I'm not threatening anyone. I'm sharing documented information. For example, this particular piece of information." He extracted a document from Marcus's briefcase. A merger agreement between Landry Enterprises and Brooks International Freight, executed in 2019. According to this contract, you were preparing to sell us your company for $800 million, every trace of color drained from Alexander's face. But then you met our sister and you thought, "Why sell the company when I can marry into something much larger?" Jamal's voice hardened into steel. "You knew exactly who Jasmine was from the very beginning. You pursued her specifically because of her connection to us. You married her to gain access to Brooks International. Every 'I love you' was a calculated business transaction." The silence was absolute. Every guest, every server, every security guard stood frozen in place. Jasmine stepped forward. Her voice emerged barely above a whisper. "Alexander, is that true?" He didn't answer. He didn't deny it. He simply stood there, paralyzed by the weight of his exposure. That silence told her everything she needed to know. The sound of approaching sirens shattered the frozen tableau. 3 SFPD vehicles swept up the estate's circular driveway, lights flashing against the manicured hedges. Detective Serena Washington emerged from the lead car, flanked by 2 uniformed officers. She walked directly to Victoria Hale. "Miss Hale, you're under arrest for assault in the 2nd degree. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law." Victoria's remaining composure disintegrated completely. "This is insane. Alexander, do something. Tell them this is all a misunderstanding." But Alexander couldn't move. His eyes remained locked on the documents Jamal still held. The irrefutable evidence of his own betrayal, his own fraud, his own hollow marriage. The handcuffs clicked around Victoria's wrists with a sound like a period at the end of a sentence. Camera phones captured every moment from every angle. By nightfall, this footage would be viewed over 50 million times worldwide. Evelyn Landry. Marcus's voice cut through the chaos like a surgical instrument. "You will be named as a co-defendant in civil proceedings. Charges will include conspiracy, intentional infliction of emotional distress, financial fraud, and violation of civil rights." Evelyn gripped the edge of the table so hard her knuckles went white. "You cannot do this to me. Do you have any idea who I am? What my family has built? I know precisely who you are." Marcus's voice was colder than the Pacific wind. "You're a woman who spent 3 years and $2.3 million trying to systematically destroy your own son's marriage because you couldn't accept a black woman in your precious family." He addressed the assembled crowd. The Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, and CNN are all running comprehensive coverage of this story in approximately 4 minutes. I would strongly suggest that anyone wishing to distance themselves from the Landry family begin doing so immediately. Half the guests were already fumbling for their phones. Jamal approached Alexander, his voice dropping to a volume only those nearby could hear. "You have 1 chance, exactly 1. Alexander looked up, his eyes hollow, his face a mask of defeat. "Testify against your mother. Provide complete documentation of the conspiracy. Cooperate fully with our legal team and law enforcement. And if I agree, we recommend leniency to prosecutors. Your company survives, though under new oversight and compliance requirements. Your name survives, though significantly diminished. And if I refuse, Brooks International terminates every contract with Landry Enterprises. Your board of directors removes you as CEO before end of business today. Your mother's assets remain frozen indefinitely. And every business journalist in America receives those 2019 merger documents proving you married our sister under completely false pretenses." Alexander turned to look at his mother. Evelyn's expression was stone and command. "Don't you dare! Don't even consider it!" she hissed. "After everything I've sacrificed for you, everything you've sacrificed for me." Alexander's voice cracked open. "You've controlled every decision I've made since I was old enough to walk. You chose my schools. You chose my career path. You chose my first wife. And when I finally chose someone for myself, someone I actually loved, you spent 3 years trying to destroy her. I was protecting our family legacy. You were protecting your bigotry, your hatred, your inability to see anyone different from you as fully human." He turned back to Jamal. "I'll testify against my mother, against Victoria. I'll provide everything." Evelyn Landry released a sound that was somewhere between a scream and a sob. It was the sound of a dynasty crumbling into dust. The terrace had descended into complete chaos. Guests fleeing to their cars, reporters materializing from nowhere, security guards uncertain who they were supposed to be protecting. But in the middle of the maelstrom, Jasmine found a microphone. She stepped onto the small stage where Victoria had announced her triumph just 90 minutes earlier. The crowd, what remained of it, fell into uncertain silence. 6 months ago, I married a man I believed loved me. Her voice was steady, strong, the voice of a woman who had walked through fire and refused to be consumed. Yesterday, I was kicked in the stomach while carrying his child in front of 200 people while I begged for help. Not one of them spoke up. Not one of them intervened. Not one of them treated me like a human being worth protecting. She looked out at the faces watching her. Some ashamed, some defiant, most simply stunned. Today, I'm standing here. Not because my brothers saved me. They didn't save me. They gave me something more important than rescue. They reminded me who I was before I forgot. She placed her hand on her belly, where her daughter was kicking. I am Jasmine Brooks. I built a literacy foundation that taught 10,000 children to read. I have delivered 862 babies safely into this world. I graduated from Stanford. I worked 18-hour shifts to help strangers. I am not a victim. I am not a charity case. I am not a diversity project or an experiment in anyone's life. Her eyes found Alexander in the crowd. He couldn't meet her gaze. And to every single person who watched what happened to me and chose to say nothing, I don't need your apology. Apologies are cheap. What I need is for you to ask yourself one question. Why did I stay silent? And then I need you to make sure you never stay silent again. She paused, letting the words penetrate. Because silence in the presence of injustice is not neutrality. It's not staying out of it. It's not minding your own business. It's complicity. And complicity has a price. Jasmine stepped down from the stage. The crowd parted before her as she walked toward the exit. She passed Alexander. She stopped. "I did love you," she said quietly for his ears alone. "That part was real, and that's the saddest part of all of this." She continued walking. She didn't look back. Outside, the chaos continued to swirl. Police cars, news vans, the grinding machinery of consequences finally catching up with the Landry dynasty. Detective Serena Washington caught up with her at the edge of the property. "Jasmine, are you all right?" Jasmine considered the question seriously. Her marriage was ashes. Her husband had never truly loved her. Her mother-in-law had spent 3 years orchestrating her destruction. She had been publicly humiliated, physically assaulted, systematically erased. But her baby was healthy and kicking. Her brothers were standing behind her. And for the first time in 3 years, she could breathe without asking permission. "I will be," she said. "I'm going to be okay." A small commotion near the catering tent caught her attention. A little girl, maybe 6 or 7, the daughter of one of the catering staff, had broken away from her mother and was running toward Jasmine. "Miss Jasmine! Miss Jasmine!" Jasmine knelt down, recognizing the child from a literacy program visit months ago. "Maya, sweetheart, what are you doing here?" I had to tell you. The little girl was practically vibrating with excitement. I read a whole book all by myself, every single page. Jasmine pulled her into a tight hug. Over the girl's shoulder, she could see Jamal watching. Her big brother, who had once carried her on his shoulders through the streets of Oakland, was smiling with tears in his eyes. "That's the best news I've heard in a very long time," Jasmine said. "I'm so incredibly proud of you." Behind her, the Landry Empire was burning to the ground. In front of her, a child had discovered the magic of reading. She knew which one mattered more. The headlines chronicled the fall of a dynasty. Victoria Hale pleaded guilty to assault in the 2nd degree. Her sentence, 18 months probation, 500 hours of community service at a domestic violence shelter, and $500,000 in restitution to Jasmine. Her PR career was permanently finished. Every firm in the industry had blacklisted her name. But something unexpected emerged from the wreckage. During her community service, Victoria began actually listening to the women in the shelter. Women who had been beaten, controlled, manipulated, gaslit by partners who claimed to love them. She started recognizing patterns. Patterns she had participated in. Patterns she had weaponized against another woman. She wrote an essay for Medium titled, "The Monster I Chose to Become." It went viral, not because anyone forgave her, but because her brutal honesty was rare in a world of carefully managed non-apologies. "I told myself I was getting justice for my father," she wrote. "But I was just becoming a different kind of abuser. Jasmine Brooks never hurt my family. I hurt hers. That's something I'll carry forever." Evelyn Landry's fall was steeper and lonelier. The society that had celebrated her for decades now treated her like a communicable disease. Every charity board removed her name from their rosters. Every social register deleted her listing. Old friends crossed the street to avoid her. She was forced to sell the Pacific Palisades estate to cover her mounting legal fees. Then the San Francisco townhouse. Then the art collection. She ended up in a one-bedroom apartment in Oakland. For the first time in 68 years, Evelyn Landry had to cook her own meals, clean her own bathroom, and exist without a single servant. The woman who had looked down on Jasmine's Oakland upbringing now lived in a smaller space than the one where Jasmine had grown up loved. Alexander Landry testified against his mother in a deposition that lasted 11 hours. He provided every document, every email, every recorded phone call. His cooperation earned him leniency in the civil suit, but nothing could salvage his reputation or his self-respect. The board of Landry Enterprises voted unanimously to remove him as CEO. He retained 15% ownership, enough to live comfortably, but not enough to matter. He started therapy twice a week, every week, learning to understand how he had become a man capable of watching his pregnant wife be kicked and choosing to say nothing. He paid child support on time, every month, without complaint or negotiation. He never once asked for custody or visitation. Detective Serena Washington received a well-deserved promotion to lieutenant. She used her new authority to establish a specialized unit investigating domestic abuse among wealthy families. Crimes that too often went unpunished because money could purchase silence. She was named SFPD Officer of the Year. In her acceptance speech, she said something that made national news. "I almost chose silence once. I watched a pregnant woman get assaulted and I hesitated. I will never make that mistake again. And I will spend my career making sure others don't make it either." Faith Zara Brooks arrived on a rainy Tuesday morning in March, 7LB2RZ. Healthy lungs that announced her presence to the entire maternity ward. Perfect in every way. All three of Jasmine's brothers were in the waiting room. Jamal cried openly, which he would deny until his dying day. Tyrone bought every stuffed animal the hospital gift shop had in stock. Marcus had already established a trust fund that would guarantee Faith the finest education money could provide. But Jasmine didn't want her daughter raised with only privilege. She wanted her raised with purpose. 6 months after Faith's birth, the Faith Zara Women's Health Center opened its doors in Oakland. The same neighborhood where Jasmine had grown up shivering in winters with no heat, but never lacking for love. The clinic provided free health care to women who couldn't afford it, prenatal care for mothers with nowhere else to turn, mental health services for survivors of abuse, job training for women rebuilding their lives. Brooks International funded the construction, but Jasmine ran everything herself. She was there every single day holding babies, counseling frightened mothers, building something that would outlast any scandal or headline. She was invited to address the United Nations on domestic violence in wealthy families. 23 million people watched her speech. "Money doesn't protect you from abuse," she told the Global Assembly. "It just makes the abuse look more expensive. It doesn't protect you from racism. It just makes the racism more polite. And it definitely doesn't protect you from people who see you as less than human. The only thing that protects you is people who refuse to stay silent, people who see injustice and speak up anyway." 1 year after the victory brunch that destroyed his family, Alexander Landry wrote a letter to Jasmine. It wasn't an apology. He knew better than to think words alone could repair what he had shattered. It was a simple request written on plain paper with trembling handwriting. He wanted to meet his daughter just once, just to see her face. Jasmine read the letter 3 times. She didn't respond. 3 months later, she sent a photograph, Faith laughing in the sunshine. Her eyes, Alexander's eyes, bright with pure joy. On the back in Jasmine's careful handwriting, she has your eyes. Prove you deserve to see them in person. Alexander understood the message. He started volunteering at a domestic violence shelter, the same one where Victoria completed her community service 3 days a week, every week. He wasn't trying to earn forgiveness. He was trying to become someone who didn't need to ask for it. He wasn't there yet. He might never fully arrive, but for the first time in his privileged, protected, carefully managed life, Alexander Landry was genuinely trying to become a decent human being. The sign outside the clinic reads, "Faith Zara Women's Health Center, because silence is never safety." Jasmine stands before it, her daughter balanced on her hip, the morning sun warm on both their faces. Behind her, 3 men who collectively control a $12 billion empire are arguing passionately about whose turn it is to hold the baby next. "You didn't actually need us, you know," Jamal says quietly. Jasmine smiles and shakes her head gently. "No, but I'm so glad you came anyway." She looks at the building, at the women walking through its doors toward help and hope, at the future being constructed one saved life at a time. "I didn't need to be rescued," she says softly. "I needed to be seen. My brothers didn't save me. They reminded the world I was never invisible. If you've ever been silenced, this story is for you. If you've ever witnessed someone else being silenced, this story is for you. Share it, subscribe, and answer honestly.